The number one reason people tell me they can't sleep is because their mind won't switch off. The reason your mind is busy at night is because
Dr. Lindsay Browning is one of the world's leading experts on sleep, having a doctorate in insomnia from the University of Oxford. But today she's going to be on the podcast talking about the sleep products that are actually worth the money, how to turn off your brain whirring as soon as you hit the pillow, and what actually works when it comes to getting to sleep.
There is a significant, immeasurable increase in road traffic accidents and heart attacks the day after the spring clock change.
Interesting.
Women are more likely to have insomnia, to have difficulty with sleep. For a working age adult, it's the sweet spot. The Goldilocks zone is somewhere between sort of... If you could just make one change that would make a massive difference to your sleep, it would be that.
But before we get into the conversation, please don't forget to subscribe or leave a 5-star review. It really, really helps us keep bringing you the podcast and guests that help you live a happier, healthier life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lindsay Browning, and you're listening to Her Discussions podcast.
Dr. Lindsay, our community have sent in so many questions about insomnia, getting to sleep when you're stressed. But first, what I would love to hear from you is, how did you end up specialising in sleep and insomnia? What inspired you to go down that path?
So I did my first degree in psychology, and then I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to Oxford to do a master's and a doctorate. So my master's was in neuroscience, and then when you're doing a doctorate, you have to pick a specialism. And I've always been really interested in sleep. I've never been a poor sleeper per se, but it's just sleep's one of those great unknowns like space or the bottom of the sea. What happens when we sleep? So there was a sleep clinic at Oxford. So I managed to do my doctorate there. So I spent 3 years studying insomnia and what causes it, how you can help treat insomnia. And as part of doing that PhD, well, DPhil, whatever. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Because it's weird, but in Oxford, it's not called a PhD, it's called a DPhil, but it's the same thing. Doing my doctorate for 3 years, studying insomnia, I became aware of what a huge issue it was for people. That people really, really struggled. They can be so depressed, so anxious about it. It can cause them to quit their jobs, to be really, really not able to cope with their lives. So through my doctorate, working with those people, I realised how important it was to go into that field, really. And this was 20 years ago that I graduated. I graduated in 2006. And back then, sleep was an inconvenience in the general, people generally thought of sleep as a waste of time. People would boast about how little sleep they got, like Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, even Donald Trump in his book. He says anyone who sleeps for more than 4 hours is an idiot, basically, because you're wasting time. Whether we want to listen to Donald Trump for sleep advice is another podcast altogether. At the time, sleep wasn't really mainstream. But because of what I've been doing, I was so interested in helping people. So I set up my sleep practice pretty much straight away after my doctorate. And as I mentioned to you just before, I was pregnant with my daughter as I was finishing my doctorate, handed in my thesis. She was born 2 weeks later, and 6 months after that, I set up Trouble Sleeping to help people with insomnia. So that's how I came into this world. And that was 20 years ago.
Gosh, it's really an early adopter, because I think that there's so many... Sleep is a much bigger conversation now than it must have been back then. And I lived with a girl in medical school, and she had really, really bad insomnia. And I saw how huge of an impact that had on her life. Life doesn't stop if you get a bad night's sleep. You can have a really awful night's sleep and you're still expected to turn up to work the next day. So I'm really excited to hear some of your practical tips on how we can improve our sleep. First of all, we're going to do a section called Buy or Bye-Bye.
Okay.
I am going to show you some products, and I would like to know whether you would buy these products or say goodbye to them. We have eye masks.
Okay. I think with a lot of these answers, it's going to be, it depends what you use them for. So eye masks can be fantastic. If you are traveling, going to a hotel, going camping somewhere, going somewhere where you can't control the light levels, eye masks can be fantastic. I have an eye mask. I'll use it on a plane. I'll take it with me if I'm going on holiday and I don't know if the curtains are going to be any good. But it's not part of my every single night routine. So I think an eye mask, it's really dependent on your sleeping environment. So buy if you don't have great curtains. Yes. Don't worry about it if your curtains are great.
That's a beautifully nuanced answer, because sometimes when you're fed this information on social media, like you should be using an eye mask. I would use an eye mask in between working night shifts, but then
Absolutely.
brilliant. But then I think because I maybe saw on social media that they were brilliant and I tried to use it as a regular thing, and I just found it so overstimulating. It did not work for me at all. It's so powerful just having someone who's an expert to just say, do you know what? It's not a case of you should be doing this or you shouldn't. It's a case of really like assessing what works for you.
Yeah, and for shift workers, they're an absolute must for sleeping during the day because it's light. So yeah, definitely.
Fabulous. Next, mouth tape.
So this I've been asked to talk about a lot over the last couple of years. So mouth taping is, for people who don't know, if you lived in a hole for 2 years, but basically it's about taping your mouth shut during the night to force yourself to breathe through your nose. Now, as a sort of generic, and it's been publicised a lot, it went TikTok viral, that everyone should mouth tape. I'm an absolute no for that because it is dangerous potentially. It has potential for causing harm. Because if the reason you're breathing through your mouth during the night, which isn't arguably as good as breathing through your nose for sure, and breathing through your mouth can cause you to snore, can cause dry mouth, this kind of thing. But there might be a reason for that because maybe your nose is blocked. Maybe you have a deviated septum. Maybe there's something wrong with your ability to breathe through your nose. Maybe it's allergies. So just simply blocking your mouth shut to force yourself to breathe through a nose that maybe can't allow air to flow means that you might wake up choking. You might wake up unable to breathe. So mouth taping, especially ones which allow some air to go through. So there are some certain mouth tapes that you put just across the middle of your mouth so you can still allow air to go sort of out the sides, are better than the full mouth tape. But if you're sure that your breathing is not impaired, that your nose is fine, you don't have sleep apnea, that nothing's going on, mouth taping isn't the end of the world, but it definitely is something you should make sure that you're able to do. It's not a buy. I would say do not buy.
Really. That's really, really helpful. Thank you. Next, sleep gummies.
So it depends what the sleep gummies contain. So obviously you can buy, we're right now we're in the UK where melatonin is not something you're able to buy over the counter, but there are many sleep gummies available all over the world which contain things like magnesium, melatonin, all sorts of things. So as a general rule, no supplements have been proven to be really, really helpful for insomnia, for sleep. There are lots of supplements that have the potential to help a little bit, but especially if you have a deficiency. This is the key message. If you are deficient in magnesium, then a magnesium supplement is going to be helpful. Just like if you have an iron deficiency or a vitamin D deficiency or any kind of deficiency, if you bring that deficiency up to a level of normality, you're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy, you're going to sleep better, everything is going to be better. That doesn't mean to say that having more of something is just going to magically make you better. So sleep gummies, they tend to contain ingredients that are, not pharmaceutical, so probably not the end of the world. And maybe in the short term, they might help, especially if you've got some kind of deficiency. But if you become reliant on them night after night, they can cause a sort of psychological dependency on them. And then you'll find that maybe you can't sleep without them. So again, sleep gummies, generally speaking, no, because there are much better ways of resolving sleeping issues that don't require you to supplement.
And I'm very excited to come on to those ways that we can get better sleep. Nasal strips.
Okay, that's another great question. So these work, if you don't know, by they sort of go over the top of your nose, and when you put them on, they sort of constrict, so they open up the nasal passage. So these can be really helpful if you do have a nasal blockage like congestion or deviated septum. They're obviously not going to completely fix that, but they can help to forcibly open up your airway through your nose. So if somebody is snoring, then using nasal strips can sometimes help to open the airway, to reduce the snoring because you're allowing yourself to breathe. So again, if you snore, these might be a great thing to try. To speak to your doctor, make sure that you've got, that you're fixing any real issues, but they're unlikely to make things worse. But if you don't snore and your breathing is fine, nasal strips aren't going to do anything. But yeah, my husband, bless him, he sometimes snores and sometimes nasal strips help him to not snore so much because they open the nasal passages.
I'm really excited to come on to snoring because my boyfriend is also a snorer, and I'm very excited for that because he also gets to sleep so much quicker than me. He is out like a lamp 5 minutes. I know unless I get to sleep before him, I'm just going to have the sound of his foghorn snoring in my ear. That's normally why I can't get to sleep. And
Okay.
we had a lot of community questions about sleeping with a partner and then the partner, maybe not them snoring or, so I'm very excited for that. Sleep spray.
So sleepy sprays. So these are sort of pillow sprays typically. You can also get them for your body that contain essential oils like lavender, chamomile, and typically there'll be a pillow spray. So you spray them on your pillow before you get into bed. Now every single night use a pillow spray. I use a sleepy spray. Not because I have insomnia and this will be a magical cure for that, but because it's lovely smell. It's part of my regular pre-sleep routine. So a little bit like going back to the eye mask we talked about before, if you do anything before bed every single night, you can start to psychologically associate using that thing with sleeping better. So if it's a positive thing, like a lovely lavender pillow spray that I use, that it makes my brain think, this is the smell we have before sleep. Sleep is coming soon. And it's not for everybody, and you might not like the certain smells. But if I go away and I travel a lot, I'll take the pillow spray with me to a hotel, because then when I spray it on the pillow in the hotel, it makes it feel more like home. Similarly, you could take your pillow with you from home, or if you use an eye mask, take that with you. So yes, it can be a great part of a consistent pre-sleep routine, but there's nothing that if you have chronic insomnia, there is no evidence whatsoever that a pillow spray is going to suddenly improve or magically fix that insomnia.
It's like Pavlov's dog, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're ringing the bell. Mm-hmm. Next, decaf coffee.
Brilliant. So 20 years ago, when I graduated, decaf coffee, to be fair, was disgusting. It really was.
Nice.
It was horrible. But nowadays, I will challenge people to be able to tell the difference between a normal coffee and a decaffeinated coffee. So caffeine, I'm sure we can talk about this in more detail, but caffeine isn't really sleep's friend. So why not replace your afternoon coffee with a decaf? And then you take the caffeine away. So yeah, decaf coffee. It's the one thing you've said that is an absolute yes.
Nice.
Yes, do that.
Brilliant. Drowsy antihistamines.
Okay, so these are used a lot in certain branded, over-the-counter pre-sleep medicine for people who are not sleeping well. So they help you to feel more drowsy. When you have a cold and you can get the day and night medication, the nighttime medication will contain the sort of antihistamine element because it helps you to be more drowsy. If you are having poor sleep in the short term for some reason, maybe you're going on an overnight flight somewhere, maybe you've got a cold, maybe you've got a short-term thing, taking a drowsy antihistamine will make you feel a little bit more groggy and might make it a little bit easier for sleep to happen on that night. It's not the end of the world. But again, as a solution to chronic insomnia, to long-term ongoing sleeping problems, it's not going to be helpful because you're going to start to become tolerant to it. It'll stop working as well. And again, you'll start to have an unhelpful psychological dependence on it.
My own example of using them, say when I've been jet lagged. And then I remember when I first started working as a doctor and I was just so unbelievably anxious when I got into bed after like an on-call shift, your mind is whizzing. And I remember taking the because I thought, this worked when I was jet lagged and I was trying to reset, for a couple of days, whatever. And it just absolutely did not help when I was super, because I guess, and I'm so interested to hear all the psychological techniques, because I think it really does also boil down to the reason, like
Absolutely.
I'd imagine that you're not sleeping, because mine was, my brain would not shut off.
Absolutely. And we can talk about that in absolute detail for sure.
Nice. Sunrise alarms.
Okay. Now, actually, I am a massive fan of these. I am in no way sponsored by any sunrise alarm clock companies. The only the only negative for them, in my opinion, is that they're so expensive.
Yeah.
If they were cheap, I would tell everyone to get one. But the reality is we have a much better ability to wake up more easily, to feel more alert, to basically bright sunshine helps to suppress melatonin. So it makes you feel less sleepy and more awake. And it's so critical for our circadian rhythm, which helps our body to know what time it is. So a sunrise alarm clock, for people who don't know, is basically an alarm clock that not only is it a sound, an audible alarm, but typically before your alarm goes off, say 20 minutes before, a light will start shining and it will become brighter and brighter and brighter, so that when your alarm goes off, already your room is incredibly bright. The they mimic sunrise, natural sunrise, which helps especially teenagers, people who are struggling to wake up in the morning, like owl type chronotypes, people who are late evening people. Sunrise alarm clocks can be really fantastic at helping you to wake up. If you are sleeping with an eye mask, this is pointless, pretty much, because with an eye mask, you can't see the light anyway. But if you're not sleeping with an eye mask, then even with your eyes closed, if you close your eyes right now and move your head from side to side, you can sense light even through closed eyelids. So when we have closed eyelids, we are able to sense light. So even when we're asleep, when it starts getting brighter, it's helping us to wake up a little bit more easily, so that when the alarm does go off, we're already a little bit nearer waking up because of the light. So I'm a big fan, but they are very expensive. So if you aren't made of money, another option is to simply open your curtains or go outside when you wake up, and you will get pretty much the same effect. So you don't need to spend all this money, but because you can literally just go outside, and outside is free, or open your curtains. So yeah, at least open your curtains or use one of these.
Nice. Calms.
So that's an example of a sort of a generic sleep supplement thing. I think it contains valerian root. There isn't any strong science that your sleep is going to be particularly improved by any supplement, whether it be valerian root, ashwagandha, any of these things. Really, I'm sure we'll talk about, the solution to fixing your sleep is much more about behavioural changes and cognitive changes, getting rid of that anxiety. So, yeah, I don't think it's a necessary. If you're having, like I said before, a blip in your sleep, you're going through something and you just want something to feel like you're doing something about it, and it's relatively inexpensive and it's not going to do you probably any harm, then you could try it. But if you're really struggling and your problem's been going on for long term, I would say this is not likely, statistically or scientifically proven, to help.
Chamomile tea.
So chamomile tea is a non-caffeinated tea drink. Personally, I detest the smell of chamomile.
Fine.
I get gifted a lot of sleepy teas. Now, there is one sleepy tea that I absolutely love. I won't necessarily talk about it now. I'm not sponsored by them either, but I love it. But basically, sleepy teas are any kind of herbal drinks before bed that typically contain lavender, chamomile, lemon balm, all sorts of nice smelling fragrances you have before bed, and they, in theory, will help you feel more relaxed. Now, again, there is no science that any of these are going to dramatically help with your sleep. But I have a sleepy tea before bed every single night. I take it on holiday with me. Everywhere I go, I always before bed have a cup of this particular sleepy tea. Not because it's scientifically proven to help sleep, but it's part of my pre-sleep routine. And the reality is, if you do something every day before bed, it helps you to associate that with sleep. And also, it's a warm drink, which is nice and relaxing. The warm drink helps you to feel just like having a warm bath before bed. If you have a warm drink, then as you start to cool down from the warmth of the bath or the drink a little bit, it kind of mimics the drop in temperature that we have as we're falling asleep. Because as we fall asleep, just before sleep, our core body temperature drops by about a degree. We need to start getting cooler. That's why we need cool bedrooms. So if you have a warm bath or a warm drink before bed, it can kind of help to mimic that process. But the great thing is, a cup of chamomile tea before bed can be a brilliant thing to do. It's a much better choice than a caffeinated cup of tea or a caffeinated coffee. So yeah, but there are little bits of evidence that suggest that chamomile or lavender might be helpful, but it's not overwhelming evidence as yet. But it's absolutely not going to hurt you. So if you want to try it, absolutely do, but don't do it instead of getting proper treatment.
I think there's a huge shift I've found in social media of people looking to social media to solve medical issues rather than looking to professionals. And I think there is that danger of, chamomile tea. My boyfriend, I don't know, if we're watching a series and we're on our last episode, he'll turn to me and be like, chamomile, should I go make us a chamomile tea? And you're right, it's like that switch in my brain of like, okay, wind down time now, And would that does help me as someone who doesn't suffer from insomnia, but maybe sometimes has, struggles to sleep. It's a medical problem. And I think especially as women, often we really minimise things. Do you find in your clinic that people don't recognise the importance of sleep and almost like dismiss it as not that big an issue?
Well, the people who come to see me in my clinic who are struggling, the complete opposite. People who come
Yeah.
and see me, they have bought every single thing that you've just shown me and more. They've bought a new mattress, they've bought new bedding, they've bought new pajamas, they've changed their curtains, they've bought a new pillow, they've bought every single brand of chamomile tea on the market, they've bought every single brand of pillow spray. They have spent hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on products to help their sleep. But the reality is, it's about lifestyle changes. The way to be healthy is to exercise regularly and to eat a diet full of great nutritious food. The way to be healthy isn't, oh, well, this pill here is the solution to your health. And then if you have this pill, you don't need to exercise, you don't need to eat healthily, you don't need to see your friends and socialise. All you have to do is have this pill. But it's easier to be sold, this pill will solve everything, or this particular tea, or this particular thing. That doesn't mean to say that that pill isn't good in some way, but it's not instead of fixing the real problems. So yeah, chamomile tea can be really helpful, but with people with insomnia, actually, if you're trying everything, then it can start to do the opposite, because you'll have that tea that you've bought because it needs to fix your sleep, and you're having the tea and you're like, oh, it really needs to fix my sleep, and if I don't sleep well tonight, I'm going to struggle tomorrow at work. And actually it can start to backfire and be triggering anxiety instead of triggering relaxation. So as long as you're having it because you like the taste of it and it makes you feel happy and relaxed, fantastic, do it. If you're having it because you've been convinced that it's going to fix your sleeping problem, it's probably not going to.
It's really interesting you say that about people who have insomnia trying every different thing. 2 points on that. I wonder how much money they wasted before actually going to see a professional. And I think that is sometimes what social media leads us to. Taking things into our own hands and telling us a product is going to fix something, rather than someone who's got expertise and who has helped hundreds of people with the same issues. The pressure that we seem to put on ourselves when we buy these different products, because I did a YouTube video where I decided every night I was going to try a different sleep modification of some different sort. One day it was like mindfulness before bed, another day something else, to see how good I could get my sleep score on my wearable.
Right.
I did find different tweaks did really help my sleep score. But then the last night, I put pressure on myself and I said, I'm going to try everything and I'm going to see if I can get my highest sleep score. And it was my worst night's sleep because I had put so much pressure on this one night, and I didn't sleep until 2 in the morning because I was lying in bed like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. And I couldn't do it.
And that's insomnia.
You previously said about sleep is you don't advocate for looking at the clock. Because I think we've all experienced that, where we need to get sleep. I've got a busy day tomorrow, look at the clock. If I go to sleep now, I'm only going to get 6 hours sleep. If I go to sleep now, I'm only going to get 5 hours sleep. Yeah, tell me more about that approach.
Okay, so not looking at a clock in the night is really, if you're listening to this, just stop having a clock that you can see in your room. And if you're wearing a clock on your wrist, like a wearable sleep tracker thing that shows you the time, just turn that ability to see the time off for a few reasons. So first of all, if you're struggling to sleep, when you're lying there, every time your time passes, you think, oh, how long has it been now? And it almost motivates you to wake up to check the time again. Whereas if you didn't have the time there, your brain wouldn't be thinking, oh, should we check the time? Should we not? Yeah, we should. And then when you do check the time, it's only going to succeed in making you more anxious and frustrated, and start doing those mental calculations of, like you said, how long has it's been? If I fall asleep right now, how much sleep will I get till morning? Or if you've had some sleep, you wake up and think, oh, it's 3 o'clock again. Why am I waking up exactly at this time every morning? And that means it's only this much time till I have to get up for work. So it's not helpful. And secondly, and this is really common in insomnia, people tend to significantly underestimate how much sleep they're getting in bed. Because just think about when you're watching TV in the evening, you might nod off on the sofa a little bit, and then you'll wake up and you think, oh gosh, that what happened to that guy? He died. What happened to him? And you realise you fell asleep because you missed some of the TV. Or if you're in a meeting and you start to get drowsy and your head nods, you realise and you sort of pull your head back up and you sort of have that jerking sensation. Gosh, I just nearly nodded off there, because your body was starting to relax. Or if you dream, if you we're lying down and you're like, oh my goodness, I was just dreaming that I was in the mountains climbing down. You know you were asleep because you were dreaming. However, a lot of sleep, when you're in bed, lying there in the dark, you're in your bed lying there in the dark, you're not going to miss anything because there's no TV, there's nothing to miss. Your head won't nod anywhere because you're physically lying down flat on a bed. And unless you're having a dream at that moment, you won't remember having dreaming sleep. So you could have a minute sleep, 5 minutes sleep, 20 minutes sleep, half an hour sleep, and not realize that you were asleep when you're lying in bed. And when you have insomnia, you'll check the time. It's 1 a.m, lie there for a bit, check the time again. It's 1:30. I still haven't fallen asleep. Lie there, check the time again. It's 2:30. Goodness, it didn't feel like an hour or two passed, but it must have been because I don't remember sleeping. And you start to tell yourself that you've been lying there for all this time, which again increases the anxiety, increases the frustration. But really, you might have been having lots of little bits of sleep, just like the nodding off in front of the TV or nodding off in that boring meeting. But you don't realize it because you keep checking the time. And every time you check the time, you just think you've been awake that whole time. So that's why it's so important to not check the time. Set your alarm for the morning. And if your alarm's going off, it's morning, get up. If it's not morning. You don't have to worry what time it is.
Yeah. Final one, earplugs.
So this is like the eye masks. If you are a shift worker, if you're sleeping in a tent, if you've gone to a hotel in the inner city and then there are police engines or fire engines, or you're in a hospital bed, for example, earplugs can be a great way of, quietening that external noise that's going to disrupt your sleep. But if you are in a quiet house, in a normal residential street, earplugs are unlikely to be necessary because it's already quiet enough. And often people, when they start to develop insomnia, they'll have been with their partner for 10 years and their partner's breathing has never been a problem. But now they have insomnia and they're not sleeping. Their partner's breathing is the most annoying sound you've ever heard in your life. And they're like, oh my goodness, it's just so frustrating. And you might turn to earplugs to get rid of that noise, or the clicking of the heating coming on. Again, you're like, oh, it's so annoying. And it's not really that those sounds are the problem. It's the fact that you're so anxious and frustrated about not sleeping that you're hyper vigilant. You're super aware of these sounds, in which case earplugs aren't really the solution. It's fixing that anxiety. So earplugs, if you're somewhere really noisy, especially in the short term, great fan of that. For every day just trying to fix your insomnia, it's that you're not fixing the real problem.
I love my earplugs for when I was doing shift work as well, for sleeping in the day. Love them for aeroplanes, but it's really interesting you say that about the hypervigilant thing, because my boyfriend, big snorer, and when he starts snoring, I reach over and these earplugs that I absolutely adore in other situations, and I put them in, super comfy, love them. I put them in and all I can hear is my heartbeat. And I've heard that from a couple of my friends as well, because when you're in that hypervigilant state, your heart isn't slowing down so that you can sleep, and it's not you're right, it's not my boyfriend, it's me being in this anxious, like, agitated state. So
if you have insomnia, you'll be able to hear a dripping tap 3 houses away.
That's really, really helpful. I would love to get into some practical tips for better quality sleep. Why is sleep so important, and what are the different phases of our sleep?
So when we fall asleep, our body and our brain are doing, we can't even imagine how many different things they are doing. Sleep is not like when you turn your computer off. That's not what sleep is. Sleep is a time when your brain and your body are incredibly busy. You are regulating hormones. You are sorting your immune system. You are repairing muscles. You are, when you're a child, you're physically growing. You're storing memories. You're getting rid of memories that aren't important. It's just absolutely incredible. So people who don't get enough sleep regularly over long periods of time tend to have a higher risk of depression, anxiety, heart disease, stroke, certain types of cancer, especially hormonal cancers, dementia, diabetes, obesity, their immune system is compromised, their memory issues. The list goes on and on and on, because sleep is massively important. Really important thing to remember is that we can all survive on a night or two or a short period of of poor sleep. If we didn't, then every new parent on the planet would have cancer and dementia and diabetes and all these terrible things. But it's if you're choosing to shorten your sleep deliberately, and that's where all the sort of scaremongering is really important. It's aimed at people who are thinking, I don't need 7 or 8 hours sleep. I can be fine on 5. And they're going to bed at 1 a.m, getting up at 6. They swear they're fine. It is highly unlikely that 5 hours sleep is enough for your body to have the time to repair and do all those processes. So I could talk, for hours about this, but I'll just talk about one example. So when we are asleep, there's a thing called cerebrospinal fluid that physically, when you are asleep, it goes into your brain and it physically washes over your brain. And there are neuroimaging studies showing this. You can physically see the cerebrospinal fluid washing over your brain. Now, what happens is we have a buildup of these things called amyloid plaques, which are associated with Alzheimer's. And during this sleep phase, the cerebrospinal fluid physically washes away the amyloid plaques. It's like physically spring cleaning your brain, like a maid going in with a mop and cleaning your bathroom. And people who don't get enough sleep long term tend to have a buildup of amyloid plaques and have a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. And again, going back to the sort of Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, these people, they developed Alzheimer's. It's not necessarily that their lack of sleep caused Alzheimer's, but I'm sure it didn't help. They were both famously advocates of not having a lot of sleep. But if we don't get enough sleep, then what happens is your brain and your body have to make choices. Well, we've only got 5 hours. So that cerebrospinal fluid thing, that'll have to wait till tomorrow, because we've got to repair our muscles, and we've got to store these memories that we just made today, and we've got to do this other stuff. So your brain, your body make decisions, and the cerebrospinal fluid washing, for example, gets pushed down. And, a night or two of that, it's fine. Just like we don't clean our bathroom every night, do we? But if you don't get enough sleep for weeks, for months, for years, you can just imagine the build-up that's going on here. So that's what's really critical. People don't necessarily understand that 5 hours sleep doesn't mean you're not missing out on vital processes. And that's where science and research has proven so strongly the association between getting a good amount of sleep improves your overall health. And for a working age adult, it's the sweet spot. The Goldilocks zone is somewhere between sort of 7 to 9 hours. There are people maybe 6.5 to 9-ish, there or thereabouts. If you're getting significantly less than that and you think you're fine, I really highly doubt that you actually are. Just like if you only ate junk food every single day, you would probably feel fine and you would be functioning. But I would really doubt that you are doing your body, that your body is the best. And if you changed your diet to be incredibly healthy, full of nutritious, all the different food groups that we should be having, you probably feel an awful lot better. And you won't realise it at the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think we all have that, like, one friend or one person in our family who smoked, drank, ate lots of crap, never slept. And they're used as this example of, oh, well, they're fine. But it's not. It's, science is based on averages. You have to look at what is the best in a general. And you're so right. Imagine if you're functioning well on 5 hours sleep, imagine how much better you would on a proper night's sleep. Yeah.
And of course, sleep, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be healthy. Look at there are many examples of really healthy people who get cancer or get, so it's not, like you say, it's an averages game.
But it's giving yourself the best fighting chance, isn't it? You mentioned before we started recording that you're an owl rather than a lark.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit about these, the chronotypes of, how we sleep? And actually, I feel that if you're a lark, you seem to function better in like today's sort of society. What advice you would give to people who maybe are owls functioning in today's society?
So our chronotype, it means when we feel the most alert of the day, basically. And owl type people or evening types are people who morning is not their friend. Morning is not my friend. And as the day goes by, you start to feel a bit more alert, a bit more awake. And come the evening, you've got a second wind and we can keep going. And I could stay up every night till 1, 2, 3, quite happily doing stuff. But the trouble is, morning doesn't change. If you go to bed at 1, 2, I still have to be up at 6:45 to attend my Peloton class at 7. I'm going to not get enough sleep. So for owl type people like myself, it is so important to put restrictions on yourself, to say, yes, even though I feel full of energy and I could keep going, I need to choose not to, because I need to choose to be in bed by 10, half 10, so that I can get a sufficient amount of sleep to be healthy. And bright light in the morning is really, really helpful to help regulate that and help me, anyone who's like an owl type, feel more awake straight away. So it's so important. But if you let yourself go to bed really late and sleep in at the weekends, our circadian rhythm can start to get out of whack. And larks, similarly, they do tend to get more sleep than owls, because the 9-to-5 world is geared up for larks, because they can finish work at 5 and go to bed at 7, 8 if they want to. But the trouble is, you can start to get out of whack with your social life. And I deal with a lot of people who are sort of extreme larks, and they're going to bed much earlier than they want to. And there's a sweet spot, isn't there, between, you don't want to go to bed too late, but you don't want to go to bed too early. So with people who are larks, it's about, maybe try and pushing through a little bit so that you can stay awake a little bit later in the evening. Try not to let yourself fall asleep on the sofa, especially when we get a bit older. Lots of older people find themselves nodding off whilst watching evening telly, and then they're awake at 3, 4 in the morning. And sometimes it's not because they have insomnia, it's because actually if you're falling asleep at 7 or 8 and waking up at 3 or 4, that's plenty of sleep. You're just at the wrong time zone. So yeah, so larks and owls, it's very much about when your body naturally feels awake and alert and sleepy. And if you are an extreme, most people are somewhere in the middle. I'm an owl, which is kind of extreme, and lots of people are larks who are an extreme. Most people are in the middle. If you're an extreme, it's about maybe having a bedtime reminder on your phone, and to remind you to go to bed at this time, especially if you're an owl. And if you're a lark, to remind you, I shouldn't really be going to bed yet. And if you're getting up way too early, maybe that's not helpful. If you get up every morning at 5 and go and walk the dog, you are going to be sleepy at 8. So we have to sort of look at that.
Right, I'm going to come on to some of the community questions. Big community question was, do we have any research on the hours of sleep women need versus men?
So yes and no. There are lots of research is done on this, and typically it does look like women need a little bit more sleep than men, but we are talking about 10 to 20 minutes more, like maybe 11 minutes. It's not really a big deal. But statistically, women do probably need a little bit more sleep than men. But the trouble is, we tend to, I say we because I'm a woman, we tend to actually have a higher incidence of sleeping problems than men. So women are more likely to have insomnia, to have difficulty with sleep. And it could be because of hormonal changes, because as women, we tend to have monthly changes in our hormones, changes in our hormones when we get pregnant, changes in our hormones when we stop being pregnant, changes in our hormones when we go through menopause. So all these times that men don't typically have such wild variations in their hormones, they can really affect sleep. And that's probably why women have a higher incidence of poor sleep compared to men, as well as a disproportionate amount of caring responsibilities sometimes, and a lot more stress sometimes, especially if you're working and managing the household, on being a sandwich generation where you've got young children and elderly parents. And typically, it shouldn't be this case, but typically a greater responsibility tends to fall on women in that regard than men. And the more stressed we are, the more likely we are to have difficulty with sleep, because anxiety, stress and sleep don't go hand in hand, really.
That really neatly brings me on to another huge community question that we had, which was how to shut off the
worrying mind.
Yes, the worrying mind, when it's almost like you're tired before you get into bed, your head hits the pillow, and suddenly every single thought you've ever thought about in your entire life is there. How do you recommend people handle that?
That's probably the number one reason people tell me they can't sleep, is because their mind won't switch off, and they say, how can I turn my mind off? Now, there are many techniques that we can talk about, which are about cognitive distraction techniques that will help to sort of make you think about something else, to sort of take you away from that busy mind. But before we talk about those, because they are good, the reality is the reason your mind is busy at night is because it has things to think about. And during the daytime, especially in today's modern world, when are we ever bored? Like, when was the last time that you or I or anyone listening sat down and did nothing and was just bored? Never. We never have to. We have a device in our palm of our hand to entertain us every single second of the day, whether you're on the train, whether you're in the loo. Like, there is no time to be bored. You're watching TV, you're doing work, you're making lunch, talking about, you're busy all the time. And then, of course, when you get into bed at night, you lie down, you turn the lights off, your head hits the pillow, and your brain goes, bing. Oh my goodness, thank goodness we've got some time and space to think. Let's think about all the things we did wrong today, or let's think about all the stuff we still have to do tomorrow. And it just goes absolutely haywire. So yes, you can do distraction techniques to refocus your mind on other things. But the reality is we need to give ourselves time and space earlier in the day to allow our brain to think. Otherwise, it's going to do it for you at 2 a.m. You'll wake up at 3 a.m. with your mind whirring. So please, it's not that hard. Just get a piece of paper and a pen, ideally. But if you're like young and not as old as me, you can do it on your iPhone or whatever. And just write down whatever's on your mind during the day. Like, give yourself 10, 15 minutes to think. And don't do it right before bed. Like, some people think it's a thing you should do right before you get into bed. But if you do it right before bed, all those thoughts will be too fresh in your mind. So a couple of hours before bed, ideally, just give yourself a little bit of time to write down a to-do list for tomorrow, or write about what's on your heart or on your mind, or whatever it is. Just brain dump. And then when you get into bed, your brain won't be thinking desperately, oh my goodness, we haven't thought today. Things like meditation, mindfulness, going for a walk in the forest, just taking some time to be still. All of those things are so important because they allow us space for our mind to think without just constantly being distracted. So that is what absolutely everyone should do. Please, if you just do one thing, do that. It's so important. But let's say you have done that and you get into bed and your brain is still busy. And you're like, oh, so annoying. There are lots of really great techniques. So you could try cognitive shuffling is a really great one. And I love this one because it's so easy. It's you think of a word, literally any word at all. So the one I use in my examples often is cake. Just any word. It could be ball, could be banana, anything. Let's say cake. So you just think of a word. And then I want you to think about, when you're lying in bed in the dark, all the words you can think of that begin with the first letter. So in the word cake, C. Cabbages, cauliflower, Canada, colander. And whenever I give this example, I always get stuck at about 4, which is stupid because there are thousands of words that begin with C. So when you're lying in bed, just keep thinking until you've completely exhausted all the C words. And then you move on to the next. So in the word cake, A, all the A words. And then you've exhausted A, the next letter K, and then E. Now, this is so great because it's completely random words. They're not linked to anything. They're firing your neurons in your brain all different places. It's not going to make you start think about any particular train of thought because it's just all these random different words, which can be really helpful at distracting you from any worries or things that you're on the back of your mind or anxieties. And hopefully you'll be so distracted and just thinking about these random words that you'll fall asleep because it's late, it's dark, and you fall asleep. So that's a really good one. Another sort of distraction technique is to imagine yourself in a really relaxing place. I call this visual imagery. And it's a bit
You're
more
on a beach,
relaxing.
lying. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's about thinking of yourself in an environment where you'd feel really relaxed. Could be a beach, could be a forest. It doesn't even have to be real. It could be you sitting on the Death Star if you love Star Wars. Like, it doesn't have to be real.
Nice.
And to think about, okay, how would it feel to be here? What would it look like? And to think about the detail of the image. And also to think about, what would it smell like here? What would I hear? If you imagine touching the seat that you're on or running your hands through the sand, what would that feel like? If you're on a beach, what would the smell of the sea smell like? The taste almost of the saltiness of the air. And it's about creating this really vivid image full of using your senses that helps you to, it's so overwhelming for your brain that it helps you to really feel like you're in that situation and that you're not worrying about what you did wrong earlier or what's going to happen tomorrow. And if we're calm and relaxed and not thinking about worries, again, we're more likely to sleep. But these techniques, the cognitive shuffling and this visual imagery, they're not to make sleep happen. This is so important because if ever anyone tries a technique to make sleep happen, invariably it won't work because you're doing it and thinking, is it working? Has my heart changed? What's going on? How much more do I have to do it for? You have to do it with the intention of just distracting yourself, biding some time, and then if you're relaxed and calm, sleep is more likely to happen. That's all we can do.
It makes me think of counting sheep, but the thing is with counting sheep is it's just so associated with sleeping that you're like, it stresses you out almost.
Yeah, and it's too easy as well. You're 1 sheep, 2, oh my goodness, I didn't pay that gas bill, 3 sheep, 4, oh, and I forgot my mum's birthday, 5 sheep. Whereas the imagery, with it being so vivid, full of your senses and detail, hopefully it's so vivid and complex that it's not allowing the space for those other thoughts.
It's also really interesting you said about the imagery, because I have like a really quite vivid memory of when I was 10, or I think even younger, like 8, which is kind of funny, is to get myself to sleep, I was a huge McFly fan, like huge McFly fan, and I really fancied Tom from McFly when I was like 8. That was like my big crush. And this is so embarrassing. This is so embarrassing to admit, but every night when I wanted to go to sleep, I imagined that I was married to Tom from McFly when I was 8 years old. Always sent me to sleep. And it was almost like I knew that was this, I don't know, like comforting, happy place for 8-year-old Faye. And now I need to maybe like try find my 27-year-old version. Yeah. I love that. Oh, the other interesting thing I was going to say is the whole idea of letting yourself be bored. My phone got stolen in London about a month ago, and I didn't have my phone for 2 days. I didn't have a phone for 2 days. And I remember the whole time thinking, I did a journey on the bus from my flat to the Vodafone shop to go get my phone. And I was sat on the bus and I was like looking at the world around me, and I thought, I literally do not remember the last time I did this. I do not remember the last time I took a bus journey and I didn't have this noise in my phone, noise in my head, like check my phone. And I remember thinking, when I was without my phone for 2 days, I remember thinking, Faye, you need to reduce your screen time. You need to make more time to be intentionally bored, because of these incredible mental health impacts of just letting your mind exist without just trying to fill it. Yeah. And then I got my phone back and that all went out the window. How would you say, in not just during the day, but at night time, the digital world impacts people's sleep?
It really does. And that's a critical thing. So having your phone next to the bed that you're going to reach for if you're, I haven't quite fallen asleep yet, I'll just check my messages, I'll just check on social media, I'll just do this. It's like a little bit like the checking the time, but it's even worse, because you check it and then, unlike the time when you've just checked it and you'll be thinking about, oh gosh, it's been quite a long time, with your phone, you start scrolling. And those apps, TikTok, Snapchat, like everything, they are designed to keep you in those apps. People spend millions, if not billions of dollars to make these apps as addictive as possible. So you're in bed because you couldn't sleep, you grab your phone, and then before you know it, oh my gosh, an hour's gone by, an hour and a half's gone by, and I've been scrolling for all this time. You might think, well, my mind was busy and I couldn't sleep, so this is better. But it's not. It's just blocking. It's not allowing your brain to do anything. So please don't reach for your phone once it's bedtime. Using your phone before bed, with the whole blue light thing, it's maybe not as damaging as it was perceived to be. But once bedtime is hit, once you've got your perceived, or I need to be in bed by 10:30, you need to not be on your phone from 10:30 until your alarm goes off. It is, if you could just make one change that would make a massive difference to your sleep, it would be that. And if you're someone who isn't great at making resolutions and sticking to them, then don't have your phone next to your bed. I have to have my phone in my room because I've got kids, one of whom is, left the house. I need to be able to be contacted. So I'm not going to put my phone downstairs. I'm not even going to put my phone outside the room. But it's not right there to be grabbed at the second of, oh gosh, I haven't slept within 5 minutes, I'll just go back on my phone. Just don't reach for it in the middle of the night. It's not going to be helpful. It's going to keep you awake. It's going to distract you from sleep, and it's going to not allow your brain to do anything that's really helpful for your mental health or your physical health.
Yeah, with so many more community questions. But first, we've got a section called Real or Real, which is basically where I'm going to show you a short video that's from social media. And I would love to know your opinions on whether it is real.
It's been a long day, as you're probably going to be able to tell. I'm so tired, but I have the hardest time sleeping ever since I've been pregnant. I don't know what it is. So I asked my midwife, and she told me to make this tart cherry magnesium mocktail, and I've also seen it all over TikTok. I've actually been drinking it, and I feel like it's been helping, and Lucky's back, so I'm going to make both of us one tonight. He's never had one, so... Okay, so I usually start with my magnesium. I do 1 scoop. I'm gonna do 1 scoop here, 1 scoop there. Then I put some tart cherry juice in. About this much. I give that a really good mix. You stop it over there. Cannot open bottles. Try it.
I will try it.
See? You're having trouble too.
No.
Okay, well that was quick. Thanks, Benny. Put some ice in it. Yeah, I don't like that much ice. I'm tired. And then I just top it with some sparkling water. Sometimes I do a soda, but today we're just gonna do this. There we go.
The Sleepy Girl mocktail. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that one wasn't nearly as OTT as some of them that I've seen. So, okay, the elements of it. Tart cherry juice. There have been some thoughts and a few mild studies that have shown a little bit that it might be helpful for sleep because it contains melatonin, natural melatonin. But the effect is negligible, like really, really small. But it's full of vitamins, nutrients. It's not a bad thing. But again, if you are having tart cherry juice, instead of speaking to a professional about really fixing your sleep problem, it's not going to be helpful. But the magnesium, again, magnesium is everywhere as a supplement. Now, if you have a magnesium deficiency and then you take magnesium, your sleep is likely to improve because when we have a magnesium deficiency, we're not as able to sleep so well. So magnesium has then been sort of taken as some kind of sleep super wonder supplement, but it's really not. There is minimal evidence that it's helpful for sleep unless you have a deficiency. So just taking more and more and more magnesium, thinking that's going to magically fix your sleep, is not helpful. In her example, I'm not sure what the quantities were, but I've seen some examples of the Sleepy Girl mocktail when they have a huge amount of magnesium, way more than you need, and that can cause tummy upsets. It can be bad if somebody has diabetes. There are certain conditions that when actually taking magnesium supplements can be quite bad for you. So basically, the Sleepy Girl mocktail that she had, tart cherry juice, it's unlikely to make your sleep worse, but equally there's no science to show it's probably going to do anything significant to help your sleep. And magnesium, what I would suggest is that if you're really struggling with your sleep, speak to your doctor and see if you have some deficiencies, because if you have an iron deficiency, a magnesium deficiency, any kind of deficiency, that could be perpetuating your sleeping problem, and in which case you should get that resolved. But just telling everyone to blanket take magnesium supplements, especially if it's from the point of view of somebody just trying to sell supplements, which is where the whole sleep and business industry it's really difficult, because I feel so sad for people who are just hemorrhaging money on all these things and be told, oh, this will help your sleep, this will help your sleep. But the reality is none of those things are really scientifically going to help your sleep. What you need to do is to stop being so anxious before bed. You need to fix your sleep behaviours, go to bed at a reasonable time, a regular sort of bedtime, and getting up every day at the same time. Make sure you're getting outside, getting bright light, getting exercise, and that you're really addressing those intrusive thoughts and anxieties and stress about sleep. And no amount of supplements is really going to balance all that really scientifically grounded, evidence-based good stuff that you really should be doing.
It takes us away from the core issue, doesn't it? It can be quite distracting.
Yeah, but of course, if you're watching TikTok, it's much more, oh, great, I can just grab this melatonin supplement or magnesium supplement that is linked in this person's bio and, that'll magically fix my sleep, rather than doing the actual stuff that is really going to help. And if you're really struggling, that's what makes me so sad, because people are desperate. I work with people who have quit their jobs, their sleep is so bad, whose lives are literally on hold. They are so depressed, they are so not coping, And to tell them that, oh, well, you should have a sleepy girl mocktail, that's the solution, is really sad because it's not going to help.
This community question was, what are the effects of night shifts? And do you have any advice for people shifting between night and day work shifts?
Sure, I do a lot of work with the police and lots of like pilots and things about this very issue. So our circadian rhythm is our biological sort of 24-hour clock. And it helps our body to know what time it is. And we can't shift that very easily day by day. And that's why we get jet lag. And even why when the clocks change in October and March, just by 1 hour, there's a significant, a measurable increase in road traffic accidents and heart attacks the day after the spring clock change, for example.
Interesting.
I mean, you can see it because even that 1 hour makes a difference. So when people are changing their bedtime, wake time by significantly more than that, either because of social things, like they're staying up late on a Friday, Saturday and sleeping in and then going to bed early Sunday, or they're doing shift work, it's going to have consequences. But of course, we don't all live in this perfect bubble world where we can all go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And if you're a new parent or if you're a shift worker, tough, you have to just adapt. So it's about making the most of it. If you are a shift worker, the really important things are getting bright light exposure when you want to be awake. So if you want to, stay awake, get outside, get bright light exposure, or even use artificial light to do that. And on the reverse of that, if you're finishing a shift and you want to go to bed, you want to be avoiding light. So if you're coming home from a shift and it's 6, 7 in the morning, the sun's up in the summer, it's going to be really bright outside. You don't want to see that sunshine or it's going to make it harder for you to go to sleep when you get home. So I recommend that we wear a hat, we wear sunglasses on the way home. Now, this is if you're using public transport. If you are driving yourself home, you need to stay awake to not have a car accident. Using public transport is recommended after a night shift because you're more likely to have a car accident. But let's say that if you're driving, you don't wear sunglasses and make it more likely to fall asleep. But if you're not, wear sunglasses. When you get home, don't open all the curtains, keep the lights dim because it's your evening. And the advice about we want to make our evenings sort of like dark, dim the lighting, that kind of thing, is so that we can help that melatonin secretion that helps us to fall asleep. That's what we want to do. And with night shift workers who come home and need to sleep during the day, that's where eye masks, earplugs, maybe a white noise machine might be really helpful to help mask the disruptive sounds from outside. But also really important is having a pre-sleep routine. And I mentioned that earlier about I have a pre-sleep routine. I have a cup of sleepy tea and I use a pillow spray. I read a book. These are things I do before bed every night. And I do them before bed, whether I'm at home, whether I'm working abroad, wherever I am. Shift workers, it's really helpful to do a similar thing before you go to sleep so that whenever you go to sleep, you always have a cup of sleepy tea, a chamomile tea, you use a pillow spray, you read a book, you have a bath, you do some relaxing yoga, whatever it is that you find nice and helpful for you. And it doesn't mean that, just like I said, I hate the taste of chamomile tea. Like that's not going to work for me. But whatever works for you, if you find something that you can consistently do before sleep during the week, when you're working 9 to 5 versus when you're working night shifts, if you do that same thing before you go to bed, it will help to psychologically make your brain think, bedtime is coming. So that's really helpful. But also carving out time. And this is another key thing for shift workers. Have a conversation with your family, because a lot of times I find that shift workers, they feel like they need to sleep from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m., say, but the Amazon delivery is coming. Or little Johnny needs a parent to go to the parent-teacher meeting. And before you know it, you're doing everything during the day as well. And 9 to 5 workers aren't expected to answer the door at 2 in the morning. So if you are a shift worker, talk to your family and help to protect a block of sleep that is protected, and put a sticky note on your door to say, Mom is sleeping until 3 p.m. so that the family know not to disturb you and that you're not there to answer the door, to do those extra jobs that might be given? Because I find that's really, really common. I don't know about you when you were doing shift work.
No, my boyfriend was brilliant, to be fair, when he'd try and like protect me, and it was really, really good. But I have vivid memories. My mum's a nurse, and I have memories of when she'd do a night shift and she'd sleep on the top floor in the guest bedroom, well away from everyone, and my dad would be like, Mum's come back from a night shift, everyone needs to shut the hell up. Like, everyone needs to be quiet, you know? And especially for women as well, it's like so many of these responsibilities end up falling on women, and remembering, you're not expected to pick the kids up from school if at 2 a.m. in the morning. Like, okay, we've got another community question that is, why am I so tired even if I take energy supplements or I've slept for 10 hours? Can you sleep too much?
Negative health consequences associated with sleeping a lot and a little. So that sort of Goldilocks zone sleep I talked about, sort of 7 to 9 hours for working age adults, is the sweet spot. And people who sleep a lot more than that or a lot less than that tend to be unhealthy. Now, people who sleep a lot more than that, it's probably not that sleeping more than that makes you sick. It's much more likely that you're sleeping for a lot more than that because either the sleep quality you're getting is not good enough, or there's something wrong, like you have an illness. The most common reason for people sleeping a lot and still feeling tired is sleep apnea. So sleep apnea is, I'm sure you know, but is a breathing disorder where people repeatedly stop breathing during the night due to a blocked airway. If it's obstructive sleep apnea, which is where your tongue might fall back into the back of your throat, or your throat itself, especially if you're a little bit overweight, might collapse on itself and block the airway. People who have sleep apnea might have symptoms of loud snoring, and then they'll have pauses in their breathing at night where the snoring stops, and the partner might go, oh, thank goodness, they've stopped snoring, hooray, but they're not breathing. And then after about a minute, the oxygen content in your blood starts to decrease so much because you're not breathing that your body goes, oh, we're not breathing. And it wakes you up with a big gasp of breath, and you go back to sleep again. Now, if you have sleep apnea, these awakenings can happen hundreds of times in the night, massively disrupting your sleep quality, but you won't remember any of the awakenings. So you'll go to bed at 10, wake up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and think, wow, I slept for 10 hours, but I feel exhausted still. And so for me, if somebody says I sleep for 10 hours, but I'm still tired, immediately I ask them, do you snore? Do you have symptoms of sleep apnea? It could also be an issue with thyroid, like thyroid deficiency can cause chronic fatigue, or you feeling really tired. An iron deficiency can make you feel really tired during the day. So if you are sleeping for more than a sufficient amount of time and still feeling tired, we need to look at what's going on there, because there's probably something wrong. Now, that's not the same as sleep inertia, which is that feeling of grogginess upon waking. Now, we have sleep, different kinds of sleep. We have light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And we sleep in things called sleep cycles. So approximately every hour and a half or so through the night, we'll go through light sleep, deep sleep, back through light sleep and into REM sleep. And then the next sleep cycle will start. And it's kind of like waves, or imagine a roller coaster. Now, if you wake up from the middle of a sleep cycle, you'll be in deeper sleep. And if you wake up from deeper sleep, you will have a thing called sleep inertia, which means your body doesn't want you to wake up in the middle of a sleep cycle. It wants you to finish the whole thing. So if you wake up in the middle because your alarm goes off or your kid's woken you up, you might wake up and feel really groggy and disorientated. And these sleep cycles, they continue, forever. So you might have slept for 7 hours, say, and you wake up to your alarm and you feel great. But then you think, oh, actually, I don't need to wake up right now. I'll go back to sleep. And you go back to sleep for half an hour. And then you'll go back into the next sleep cycle. And then the second time you wake up half an hour later, you might be in the middle of a sleep cycle. And then when you wake up, you'll feel worse. You'll feel more tired. And loads of people say, oh, I slept too much. I ruined it. I should have got up half an hour ago because I felt good then and now I feel groggy. It's not that you've ruined anything. It's just that you've woken up with sleep inertia. And sleep inertia should dissipate. It should go away within maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes approximately. So if you wake up and you feel really tired, but then within 20 minutes you've had a cup of tea and a piece of toast and you feel fine, don't worry about that. That's normal. But if that tiredness continues through the day, then we have to be looking at, okay, why are you still feeling tired? Especially if you've had at least 9 hours sleep. If you're sleeping for more than that and still feeling tired, you need to speak to a professional to find out what's going on there, because something's not right.
When you were talking about sleep inertia, that was really interesting, because I was very lucky. One of my best Christmas presents I've ever got was the sunrise alarm, and it's been with me from the whole way through medical school, and I've got it, the same one now. I always found that I'd set my sunrise alarm to say 40 minutes, so it gradually lit up the room for 40 minutes. And what I began to find is some mornings I'd wake up 10 minutes before my alarm. Some mornings I might wake up 30 minutes before my alarm. And I felt like that was quite a good... I avoided the sleep inertia, because it was almost like I was woken up at the lightest point. That makes sense with the science. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. But there's no... Because some people say that you can get sleep trackers and things that sense where you are in your sleep cycle, and they will deliberately try to wake you up when you're in between sleep cycles so that you don't have sleep inertia. But I'm really not a fan of that, and I'll explain why. So if your alarm is set for 7 a.m. because you have to be awake at 7 for work, but you've got this sleep tracker thing, and it realizes that at 6:30 you'll be in lightest part of sleep, but by 7 you'll have gone into the next sleep cycle. So if you wake up at 7, you'll have some sleep inertia. What it will do is it'll wake you up at 6:30. Now, you've just lost half an hour's sleep. So I'm really not a fan of that, because yes, you'll wake up, and at the moment you wake up, you'll feel more alert. But the point is, you missed out on half an hour's sleep. And whether you woke up and felt groggy or woke up and felt alert at that moment, within 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you'll feel fine anyway. So it's really important to me that people just get up, and unless you need to be on it, unless you're waking up and you need to be on, which I have done sometimes, you have to be on live TV, within 20 minutes, in which case that I want to avoid sleep inertia for that point.
Yeah.
But if you're a normal person who doesn't have something you have to do within half an hour of waking up, then allow yourself to get more sleep, because again, getting 7 to 9 hours sleep helps us to be healthier. And if we're missing out on that because we're focusing so much on avoiding sleep inertia, actually we might be doing ourselves some damage.
I would love to get your opinions on something that's a little bit controversial. Melatonin. Where do you stand on melatonin?
So in the UK, you can't buy melatonin over the counter. It's, you have to get it prescribed. In other countries, that's not the same case. So I have lots of clients who have travelled and have melatonin that they bought from elsewhere. Now, there is the idea that because melatonin is our sort of sleep timing hormone, it tells our body that it's time for sleep. Melatonin can be really helpful if you have a sleep timing issue. Now, that is jet lag, or maybe not necessarily shift work, because you can get a groggy hangover effect with melatonin. So let's just talk about jet lag. If you're traveling across time zones, melatonin can be really helpful at helping your body shift to this new time zone. But it's not really hugely effective for insomnia. If your sleeping problem is caused by getting into bed and feeling anxious, frustrated, you're really not sleeping well and you're really annoyed about it, melatonin is unlikely to help with that. But of course, people turn to it because people are desperate. There are some caveats to that. If you are a bit older, so on the NHS, if you're over 55, you can get prescribed melatonin, because as we get older, our melatonin production may start to decrease a little bit. And actually, maybe your sleeping issue might be because you're not producing quite enough melatonin. And also, some people with ADHD and autism, there can be neurological differences. So sometimes, especially some children with ADHD or autism, they can find sleep really, really difficult. And that can be because they're not producing or not secreting melatonin at the right kind of time. And for them, melatonin that can be prescribed on the NHS by a doctor can be really helpful. But for people who are younger than 55 and don't have a sleep timing issue, they just have a normal insomnia, melatonin is unlikely to be the solution for that.
Do we have research on how it impacts on natural production of melatonin if we take melatonin?
So some studies have found that when we take melatonin supplements, and for example, in America, and I'm American, not that you can tell from my thick American accent, but in America, for example, more is more. You go to a pharmacy and you can buy 1,000 paracetamol. They have lots of melatonin, and bigger is better in America. So basically people are persuaded that you should buy the biggest supplement you can. So when you buy melatonin, you can get it in 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams or 15 milligrams or, but some research has found that actually, if we take melatonin at far greater quantities than our body naturally produces, it's maybe not quite as effective. So 2.5 milligrams is more in line with what we naturally secrete, which is a very small amount. And you'll struggle if you went to America and bought melatonin to find 2.5 milligrams. I think they tend to start from sort of 5 because, again, it's that more is more. And if you have a huge amount, it's just overloading your system a lot, and you might find that you have quite a big hangover effect from that melatonin and feel really groggy later in the day. And if you're a parent of young children, you may not want to have something that makes you feel so sedated or so unconscious or so sleepy. You maybe want to be able to be woken up in the middle of the night to attend to that baby. So melatonin isn't the enemy. It's a hormone that we naturally produce, and for some people it can be very helpful. But the amount that we take and the timing of it and who takes it are all things that we need to take into account.
That really nicely actually brings on to another community question that we had for new parents. So you have mentioned a couple of times, being a new parent is a sleep deprivation
it sure is.
in itself. Tips on managing sleep hygiene when you are a parent with toddlers and newborns.
Okay. So often people will develop a real problem with their sleep when they have a new baby, because not only is their sleep being disrupted, and a new baby, you have these sleep cycles, and you might be woken up in the middle of a sleep cycle, and it's really hard. So not only is your sleep being disrupted by a newborn who's waking up through the night to need to be fed, but then suddenly you might discover a sense of urgency or pressure on yourself, thinking, I have to go back to sleep quickly because the baby's going to be awake again in a couple of hours, so I need to fall asleep right now. And that anxiety about needing to fall asleep, that's where all of insomnia stems from. Because when we are stressed or anxious, it's harder to sleep. Because when we were cavemen, if there was some kind of problem like wild animals outside or a physical problem, a caveman trying to attack you, or you felt threatened, you can't go to sleep because you need to be awake to defend yourself. So when we feel any kind of anxiety, stress, doesn't have to be a physical threat, because most of us nowadays aren't faced with, thankfully, physical threats every day. But we have financial stresses, we have health stresses, we have the stress of, oh my goodness, I have to fall asleep soon because the baby will wake up. Your body is stressed. And if it's stressed, it's much harder to fall asleep. So the more pressure you put on yourself to fall asleep quickly, and that's similar to shift workers. Sometimes they think, I must fall asleep now because my shift's going to start. The harder it is to fall asleep. I'm a sleep expert. This is my job. I'm literally this is my entire job. If you stuck a gun to my head and said, right, Lindsay, you've got to fall asleep right now or I will shoot you, there is literally nothing I could do to fall asleep right now. And I am a world-leading sleep expert, because the stress and pressure of needing to fall asleep on command is impossible. So new parents need to just let that go a little bit. Just calm down. You can't force yourself to fall asleep on command. And if you do take a while to fall back to sleep again, and then your baby wakes you up and you've had almost no sleep, it's really not great. It feels awful, but it's not forever. It's a short period of time relatively. Just try to reduce the amount of things that you're trying to achieve during your day. Someone gave me, it's slightly off topic, but someone gave me the best tip when I was a new parent. They said, have an ironing board or a hoover out. Whenever someone comes to visit you, say, oh, I was just about to do the hoovering. And then they'll be like, oh, I could do that for you. So you can get those little bits of help just from, just there. But yeah, if you're a new parent, take the pressure off needing to fall asleep quickly, and accept that you're going to be sleep deprived for a while, and that isn't the end of the world. And all the advice about everyone has to sleep 7 to 9 hours, and if you don't, then you're going to have all these health problems. It's about consistent short sleep. It's about almost intentionally depriving yourself. We are all able to manage on less sleep in the short term, just like we aren't able to cook amazing, nutritious meals when we're a new parent or when we're really stressed. But that's okay in the short term. Your baby will start sleeping through and sleeping better, and you'll be okay. nap when when you're able to nap. Maybe go to bed earlier than you would do so that you're sleeping more. You've got more opportunity to sleep when you have a new baby. And if you're lucky enough to be with a partner, do shifts. One of you do the first 3-4 hours and the other one do the next 3-4 hours. So you at least get one block of sleep. And even if your sleep is very broken as a parent, it's still sleep. It still counts. It's not quite the same, but it's still okay. So just cut yourself some slack. Maybe your roots won't be done. Maybe your house isn't going to be immaculate. Maybe you're going to look a bit tired. But it's okay. You've got this beautiful baby. You'll forget all this in 6-9 months and it'll be better.
That's really, really reassuring, I'm sure, to a lot of the listeners, because I think the rise in sleep conversation is incredible and awareness of the importance of sleep. But it does bring about this pressure that, like, if you are not getting this sleep, then that is dreadful, The next community question we had is, any advice for sleeping with a partner and are impacted by their decisions? Sometimes even I know when I'm a bit twitchy and I'm struggling to get to sleep and my boyfriend's like, Faye, just stay still, like stop twitching. Or like my boyfriend, he always snores. How do you manage that?
Okay, a few things. So one top thing I would say is, if you have a partner, it's natural to both go to bed together and to try and get up together. But it's highly unlikely that you both have exactly the same sleep needs. So the 7 to 9 hours I talked about, the amount of sleep that we should be getting, it's a range, because some people will need nearer 7 hours. Some people will need nearer 9. So me, myself, I'm more of a 8.5, 8.75 hour person, really. That's how much sleep I need to be me, to be great. Do I always get that? No, I don't, because I'm really busy. But I know that in order for me to feel like, wow, I feel great today, I need to get 8.75 hours sleep. Partners don't necessarily have the same amount of sleep that they need. So trying to match it can actually cause some problems. So have a talk with your partner and see how much sleep each of you needs. And if one of you needs a lot less sleep than the other, then don't go to bed at the same time, because the one who needs less sleep is probably going to end up on their phone, potentially distracting the other one who needs more sleep. So think about, either choosing to go to bed together and one of you gets up a bit earlier than the other, or one of you comes to bed later. And if you want to go to bed earlier for snuggle time, for example, that's fine. Then one of you can leave and go and do something else in another room. Don't feel that you have to match, because it can be unhelpful.
What resonates with me a lot is what you've said about, you can try all these tactics in the world. If you are feeling anxious, you will not be able to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Supplements, sleeping pills, all these kinds of things, they try and make you more tired, more sedated. But the reality is, if you're really anxious, they're not going to help. And sometimes people have insomnia and they say, well, I'm taking all this medication, but I'm still not able to sleep. And of course, if you or I were really, really sleepy and then suddenly faced with a gunman walking in the room or a vicious wild animal, it wouldn't matter how sleepy we were, we would be wide awake. And if we took a prescription sleeping drug, we would still be wide awake, because our body would be so in fight or flight mode that it would be fighting the sleeping pill to keep us awake because there was a threat. And this is what we're encountering when we go to sleep at night if we're really stressed and anxious. The more pressure you put on yourself on the need to fall asleep quickly because your sleep is not good, because you read somewhere you need to get 8 hours sleep or else you'll get dementia, because your shift starts in X number of hours, the more pressure you put on yourself to need to fall asleep right now, the more anxiety you're creating. So I would say try some relaxation techniques to help you calm down. But if you aren't able to fall asleep at that point, the absolute best thing to do is to stop trying, to get up out of bed and go to ideally another room and just have a break for a bit. Because staying in bed trying to force sleep, it just makes you more stressed, more frustrated. You're just continuing to fail to sleep, which makes everything worse. So give yourself a little bit of time. Try the imagery, try the cognitive shuffling, do some slow deep breathing, try something. If you're like, do you know what, I'm still stressed and I can't sleep. Fine, okay, this is annoying, but it is what it is. Get up out of bed and go and read a book, go and do a jigsaw, go and make a cake, go and make some dinner for you tomorrow when you may be tired because you didn't get enough sleep. At least you've made dinner in advance, or you do something and then come back to bed when you're feeling a bit more sleepy and try again. Think of it like a reset. What I don't want you to do is to get up out of bed, go to another room and keep all the lights off and lie down and try and meditate, because that's not having a break. That's not giving you a break from trying to sleep and failing. That's you still trying to sleep, but just in another room. So it's really like having a proper break. You're like, fine, I tried to sleep. It didn't work. That's annoying, but it is what it is. Fine, I'll go and do something else. And that's kind of the core essence of CBTI, which is the treatment for insomnia. So it's cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia, which is scientifically incredibly validated and effective. But lots of people don't know about it. And they're turning to all sorts of TikTok trends and supplements, rather than, if you have insomnia, CBTI is likely to be incredibly effective for you. So I would say, if you are struggling with your sleep, speak to your healthcare professional, because CBTI should be available via the healthcare service. You can do it privately. You can do it, you should have access to it either maybe like an app or through talking therapies. But it really is incredibly effective. Talking to your doctor, your healthcare provider, doesn't mean you're just going to be prescribed sleeping medication. CBTI is a proper solution and fix to your sleep.
One of the most common criticisms I hear about CBT is people say, I don't feel any different for various different things. And I think maybe in this world of like instant gratification, we're so used to results being instantaneous. What advice would you give someone who maybe they're starting CBTI? How long do people have to hold on and keep going for to notice a difference?
Sure. So CBTI is very different from CBT. And this is weird. It's kind of frustrating. It's got such a similar name. But CBTI is cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia. And it's completely different to CBT for depression or for anxiety. And how CBTI works is that you keep a sleep diary throughout the process, and you'll speak to a therapist or input the information to an app, and it will explain to you a little bit about what normal sleep looks like, how anxiety affects sleep, and tell you, okay, you need to start going to bed at this time. If you can't sleep, do this. Get up at this time. Here are some things to do before bed, and it will tailor and tweak it through this journey. Now, the beginning of CBTI, I'm not going to lie, is really tough. It really is. It's a little bit like, I don't have a six-pack. I mean, you may not be able to see me, but I don't. But I know how to get one, yeah? And it's by doing a hell of a lot of sit-ups and eating a lot of salads. Now, if I ate just salads and protein for a week and I did 200 sit-ups a day, after a week, I wouldn't have a six-pack. What I would have is a very painful stomach and I would feel very hangry. But we both know if I continued to do that, after 2, 3, 4 weeks, I would have an awesome set of abs and I would, feel really great. But you've got to put the effort in and it takes a while to get there. CBTI is like that. At the beginning, you're putting a lot of work in and it's really painful. And you might be thinking, but it's not working. But it really is. And CBTI is all about helping you relearn that sleep is going to happen whether you try to make it happen or not, and to just help you to deal with, if you sleep, great. If you don't sleep, it'll be okay. Because insomnia is kind of the fear of not sleeping. It's the fear that if I don't sleep tonight, I won't be able to cope tomorrow. And the solution isn't to make you sleep. It's to help you learn that not sleeping actually isn't the end of the world, that it will be okay.
And when you said about it takes a long time, it kind of reminds me of, when you're growing up and you see like a relative that maybe you haven't seen for ages and they say, oh, you've grown so big. But actually, when you've been looking at yourself in the mirror every single day, you don't realise how much you've changed. But you see this relative that hasn't seen you in so many months and they say, oh my gosh, you've changed so much. I'd imagine CBT is a bit like that, or CBTI is a bit like that, where because it's these minuscule little changes so gradually, you don't notice it until maybe, you get to a point and you look back maybe a couple of months beforehand when sleep was, or a lack of sleep was dictating your life, or this fear of not being able to sleep was dictating your life, and suddenly, hopefully, it doesn't have as much control.
So I said the first week is really hard. The second week is less hard. And by the third and fourth week, you're like, okay, I can see that I'm going to fix my sleep. And the great thing about CBTI is that it's giving people the tools and skills to manage their poor sleep forever. And then once they've done it, it's just amazing. It really is amazing, and it helps people so much.
Brilliant. Dr. Lindsay, you've been absolutely incredible. And I think that it's going to be an episode that people, I hope, have in their toolkit. Struggling to sleep is such a widespread issue for so many people. Before we finish the episode, there's a question we've been asking all our guests, which is, Dr. Lindsay, what do you wish every woman knew by the time she was 25? It's a big question.
That is a big question. Fertility does change the older we get. And I think that I did a doctorate. I've been doing a lot of things, but it gets to a stage in your life. I had children. I had my first when I was 27. But it gets to a stage in your life where fertility is not as easy as it was. And I'm lucky enough that I didn't struggle, but I have seen so many friends and people that I know, my peers, who have massively struggled with fertility issues. So I think, to know that, by the time you're 25, you want to be thinking about that at some point. And having a child, if you want to have a child, it is really hard. It is financially devastating. It is devastating for your body. It's devastating for all sorts of things. But it can be absolutely amazing. And you have to realize that if you want to go down that path, you have to take the rough with the smooth. And it's not something that you necessarily wait for your life to be perfect. It may be too late for that point. So yeah, it's completely off topic, but I think that's probably something that I certainly didn't think about fertility when I was 25. And I'm lucky enough that I met my partner when we were kids, basically, and we've been together forever and we had children young. But having seen other people really struggling, it's something I think, the 25-year-old women just think about and be aware of, because when you're 42, 45, it's a different thing to be facing at that point.
That really resonates with me. I went down the fertility or egg freezing route, and because I saw someone in one of my old bosses go through IVF and struggle with their fertility, and sometimes it can feel like fear-mongering to say to women in their 20s, mid-20s, be thinking about this. Yeah. But actually, personally for me, I know that I'd much rather be having these thoughts and conversations in my mid-20s than having to come to terms with not ever being able to have children maybe in my 30s or 40s. So thank you so much, Dr. Lindsay. That was an absolutely brilliant episode and final insight. So thank you.
Thank you.